program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
The world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic as some parts of the world undergo widespread quarantine all over again. This means further dents into already ailing economies, which are still trying to recover from the initial lockdowns that saw many businesses closed, large companies exiting the market, and millions of people losing their jobs. The situation is not much different here in Botswana, where the country is faced with a mammoth task of keeping the number of infections low while also keeping the economy running. In this time, most sectors have been severely affected, but none more than the tourism sector, which is only now flickering a bit of hope. While this has surely affected the projected economic growth of the country, which Moody's now puts at -7% for the year 2020, with government having the figure at -8.9%. Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues, proudly brought to you in association with the First National Bank of Botswana. The global village is still fighting the unending effects of COVID-19, which still threatens the survival of many economies around the world. But how has the situation been in our country? Well, eConsult released our report on the 2020 economic review for the third quarter, which was compiled by economists Sethunya, Sejoe and Kitso, Mokhurutshe, which amongst other things detailed what would need to happen to jumpstart Botswana's economy following the devastating impact of the pandemic. Please give us a brief overview of the eConsult economic review for the third quarter.
eConsult economic review is a quarterly publication or a newsletter, as some people may want to call it. Basically, sort of discuss development that have taken place in the economy during that specific quarter.
So for the Q3 economic review, the data that highlights or shows the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Botswana was finally released by Statistics Botswana. We touched on the fact that GDP contracted by about -4.2%. We also highlight the fact that if you isolate the quarter of itself, the 3 months from April, May, June, and you compare it with April, May, June of the previous year, we find that GDP contracted by -24%. Even compared to other African countries such as South Africa and Namibia and Kenya, we have fared much worse than all those other countries, simply because of the exposure that our economy was in due to the pandemic and its effect on diamonds, on the diamond market, and its effect on the tourism industry due to the various lockdowns.
How do the projections on the first quarter review compare with the projections on the quarter 3 review? And how do they differ with what is actually happening on the ground?
The initial projections were showing a positive growth. But when the coronavirus started, we made revisions on the projections.
When we published the first quarter economic review, we had initial growth projections for the year. This is before the COVID-19 pandemic. We had our initial projections that growth would be positive at about 3.8%. The Ministry of Finance also had projected positive growth during the year at about 4.3%. But as soon as the pandemic hit, we then revised our projections, and we had projected a growth of -4%. And this was under the assumption that there would be a much speedier and stronger global and domestic recovery in markets, which has not panned out that way. So now our current projections believe that growth for the year will be as low as -8.9%. There have also been changes in our expectations for government revenue. Government revenue has now fallen. This is mainly due to a decline in mineral revenues because the diamond market has performed poorly during the lockdown, so that affected government revenues. Our exports have taken a big decline as well. This is due again to the travel restrictions that were put in place. So because of that decline in exports, that has a knock-on effect onto the current account.
Government has now developed a strategy policy called the Economic Recovery Transformation Plan, which, in your words, on your second quarter review, quote unquote, has its main objective as accelerating the pace of implementation of existing transformation policies in Botswana. May you please share with our viewers at home what these policies that you speak of are?
The ERTP has been developed to work alongside the policies that have been set forth by NDP 11 and by Vision 2036. And as such, it has adopted the 4 pillars and added a 5th, the 4 pillars of those of the NDP 11 strategies, which are promoting export-led growth, the development of human capital, improving the efficiency of government spending, and investment in infrastructure. Following these 4 pillars, there's now been a 5th that has been added by the ERTP, which is to build the resilience of the economy in order to mitigate or to reduce the negative effects of any future shocks or hits that our economy might sustain in the future.
Still on the second quarter review, it goes on to say, quote unquote, if successfully implemented, the RTP will assist Botswana to successfully transition out of the coronavirus crisis, stimulate economic activity, and improve economic growth. So in that regard, what key caveats do you think should be included in the ERTP's implementation strategy, to make sure that your hopes for it are actually realized?
The most important thing that needs to be established is strong criteria or assessment criteria for which projects are undertaken or not, because we are working on a limited budget. As we've said, government revenues have fallen. So we need to select projects that have a high return and a high impact on not only the economy as a whole, but at the local and district level as well, that have a strong social impact. The criteria that should be used are job creation. Will this project create a lot of jobs? Does this project help us with our goal of export diversification? Does this project empower citizens? Does it help with import substitution? There needs to be a clear and open and fair bidding process for procurement and so on and so forth. The projects that are selected not only have a high return but are also cost effective. We also need a strong monitoring and evaluation framework. This would be used to ensure that projects are delivered in a cost efficient and timely manner, and because previously monitoring and evaluation of projects has been a weak point for Botswana and our implementation.
When running a business means
Where did I put that receipt?
we can help you with instant accounting, free software that does your bookkeeping for you. When running a business means
Wait, what do you mean the container hasn't arrived?
we help protect your business from risk with Mokhurutshe Insurance. And when it means
How do we pay our staff that don't have bank accounts?
we help you make multiple payments directly to people's phones with e-wallet bulk send. At FNB, we're constantly innovating to help business owners at every stage of their journey.
Welcome back to First Issues. Our conversation on eConsult Economic Review for the third quarter continues with the economists Sethunya Sejoe and Kitso Mokhurutshe. Say the strategy is successfully implemented, how long would it take for the economy of our country to start showing positive trajectory?
It is very difficult to pinpoint exactly when we will see positive growth or when growth will reach this point. But there have been projections made. The Ministry of Finance project positive growth of 7.7% next year. So for the next year, the IMF project growth to be at about 8.6%, positive 8.6% next year. But some sectors will take longer to recover than others. So for instance, tourism, we only expect to see strong growth in the tourism sector by maybe mid-2021, unlike other sectors that will recover faster.
Some countries have now gone into second rounds of complete economic lockdowns. So in your opinion, is this a sustainable strategy, taking into account that there have been calls to balance life and livelihoods?
I believe countries make regulations based on what they know best will work best for their countries. But in my opinion, I think lockdowns should be the last resort.
Assuming that there is a one-size-fits-all policy for all the countries in the world is not only dangerous, but is also misguided and wrong. In my opinion, having economic shutdowns should be a last resort and only done when the spread of the virus can no longer be controlled. Because when done randomly or frequently, the economic disruptions will have a detriment, will increase the amount of time that countries spend with negative economic growth and how deep a country's recession will be due to the pandemic.
So let us go back to the second quarter review, which in its conclusion speaks of the economic inequalities in education, infrastructure, job opportunities, etc., so on and so forth, that exist between urban settlements, their peripheries and rural areas. So looking at all of this data, what do you think it would take to close these gaps to ensure equal economic distribution across all districts in our country?
Commission a study looking at each district, looking at each region and seeing which areas they need to improve most on, whether it be education, whether it be access to internet, whether it be creating job opportunities within this region. We need to know what specific problems each district and each region is facing in order to then go on and draw up policies that then solve these problems and these issues.